So today we're doing distance between lines. So yesterday we were doing the intersection of lines, so we assumed that at some point they would intersect. And we found out there's certain ways that they could intersect. They can intersect at a point, or they can intersect on line where it's infinite intersections, or they didn't intersect, either because they were parallel or they were skew. Now we're going to investigate those situations where they don't intersect. Can we find the distance between them? Okay. But so for starters, we got to define what we mean about distance, because if you look at two lines, for example, these ones, there are all sorts of different distances between them. Like if I wanted to, I could, do this sort of length, and that would be a very different distance than the red distance, right? Or something like this. That is the distance between the blue line and the green line. And since there's all these different distances, we have to define just one distance. And it's the shortest distance is the perpendicular distance. So if I just get rid of these, that's the one that we're going to define as the distance between the line, the perpendicular distance between them. That's going to be important, especially when we get to skew lines, because when we have skew lines, there's only one perpendicular distance will be between them. Again, if you're way off on the edges, it's not going to make any sense. So before we go off and talk about this, we have to consider all the relationships between two lines in 3 space. Okay, so this is where I'm going to get the audience participation in this part. So considering all the possible ways that two lines can either intersect or not, what are all the different possible ways? So how can two lines, what's the relationship between two lines and 3 spaces? All the different possibilities. Some of them we looked at yesterday. Nice and loud. Skew. So the situations where they're non-parallel, but still don't touch. Okay, so the skew line. So that's one. What else? Sorry? Same line. So they're the exact same line. Um, they're the same parallel, and they touch everywhere. And so the intersection is infinite, right? Okay, what else? Sorry? Intersecting lines, and they intersect at a single point. So they would come like this, and they would intersect at a single point. And then there's a fourth. Sorry? Parallel, good. And so those ones, they are parallel, but they are distinct, right? They're different lines. And so there's no intersection there. We're going to look at the distance between those. So the first one that I have on my list is what you just said. Parallel and, oh, sorry, not the first one you said, but parallel and identical. So they are the exact same line. The intersection, there's infinite intersections, but in this today we're looking at the distance. So the distance between two lines that are parallel and identical is obviously 0 because they're touching each other. There's your situation where they're parallel and distinct. So because they're parallel and distinct and they're not skew, they're going to run beside each other, and you can find a perpendicular distance, just like in the picture. So this one, you could actually find the distance. Third case, non-parallel and intersecting. And the intersection is a single point. And so if the two lines do intersect at a point, the minimum distance between those two lines is obviously 0 because they're touching. And then the final is non-parallel and non-intersecting, so they're skew. So they would, one cross on top of each other, but not parallel. In that case, you could also find the distance between them. So it's important to remember all these because the first thing you're going to do when investigating the distance between two lines is to see if you can maybe, hopefully, get number 1 and number 3. Because if you can figure out that you have parallel and identical lines, you don't need to investigate the distance. You know the distance is 0. Or if you can figure out beforehand that they're going to intersect, that they're not skew, then boom, you don't need to do anything more. You know the distance is going to be 0. Um, it's only the cases when they're parallel and distinct, or non-parallel and non-intersecting, or skew, that you'll have to actually go the next step and figure out the distance.